everyone, my name is Lacey and I'm here today to talk to you guys about JavaScript events. Now by default, HTML web pages don't do anything special when the user interacts with certain elements. Let's say for example, if a user were to click on a button on a web page, nothing really special were to happen. If a user were to type inside an input field, nothing special would happen in that case either. So what we're going to try to do today is see if we can implement some JavaScript code to see if we can get some feedback on our web page for when the user does create those simple interactions. Now, how exactly are we going to do that? Well, the way we're going to do that today is by using what we call JavaScript event listeners. So what an event listener does is actually listens on our web page for when an event occurs. So for example, we can say whenever a button was clicked on. We can say whenever an element or an input field was typed in. We can check for a lot of different events on our web page. And I actually have here for you guys in this awesome JSFiddle that I have set up for you what that JavaScript code actually looks like. So here we have a little model that shows you the basic setup of what an event listener looks like. So we have element.addEventListener. So essentially what we're doing first is getting the HTML element that we want to attach that event listener to. Now this element can be anything from a button, it can be an input field, it could be a paragraph, it could be a div, it could be a heading, it could be pretty much anything on our HTML web page. It could even be the whole document if you want it to be so. Now once you select the kind of element that you want to attach the listener to, you say .addEventListener. So we selected an element here and we added an event listener. However, there's a lot of different listener types. There's on click, there's on focus, on blur, on drag. There's so many different ones. You actually have to be very specific as to which one you want to listen to. So the next step is to, within parentheses and quotes, actually list the name of the listener you're looking out for. So whether that is an on click, which is when you click on an element, on focus, which is actually when you click inside of an input field, on blur, when you are no longer clicking inside of an input field. So you have to say this exact name of the listener you're looking for. Now I do want to make note that when you are looking through the different types of listeners that you can use within this functionality, make sure not to use the on prefix. The on prefix you only use if you're doing your event listeners in line within HTML. You want to make sure to type them in just by the name of the listener. So instead of on click, you're typing in just the word click. Instead of on blur, you're typing in only the word blur inside of this section right here. Now, there's a lot of event listeners like I mentioned, and if you're not exactly sure which one to use when we're running through the problem set, I actually have linked down here a link to W3 School's reference for different event listeners that you can look out for. So if you do want to see the full documentation for it, definitely check out that link below for you guys to run through and see all the different awesome event listeners you can use. So a little recap so far of what we have. We have an element that we have added an event listener to. We specify the type of listener that we actually want to listen out for. And the next step would be just to create a function that's actually going to show the response on the HTML web page. So this could be either writing inside of a div, appending a new child, using the .style selector to actually change out the color or the background or anything of the sort. So this function can do pretty much anything we want it to do. But the important part is that we are able to create that function and have it listed and attached to that event listener. So now that we have the gist of event listeners, why we use them, how they work, just the basic functionality of it, it's time to go ahead and delve a little bit deeper and see how we can use this in a real-world practice. So if I scroll down here in my JSFiddle, looks like I have 5 problem sets that we're going to tackle today. And it looks like the first problem, problem 1, is asking me to create an event handler that will recognize when this button right here is clicked. So I have a button called Click Me, and right now when I click on it, nothing happens, right? Nothing special, just a regular button, as is by default in HTML. Now this button has the ID of button 1, and what I want to happen here, as my problem is asking me to do, is to display a message inside this div section right here. This div section is called problem 1, and what I want to happen is when I click on the Click Me button, I want to show a message down here inside of this div. So let's see if we can make that happen with JavaScript. So over on my left hand side here, I have problem 1. And the first thing I have to do, if I scroll up here, is select the element. So the element that I want to add the event listener to is my button. So I'm going to create a variable, typing in var, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it button1. And I'm going to select the element. The way I do that is with my document.getElementById. So I'll type in document.get.element.by-id. And the ID of the button, if I go back over to my problem, looks like it's called button1, btn1. So I'll type that in as my ID. And then I'll add in my semicolon to finish that line of code. So far I have button1, which holds my button right over here. On the next line, now that I have my element, the next thing I have to do is take that element and add the event listener to it. So I'm going to type in button1, which is my button, and I'm going to say dot add event, make sure I spell event right, add event listener. And now within parentheses and within quotes, I have to say the kind of listener that I'm looking out for, and it looks like problem 1 is asking me for when I click on this button. So within the quotes, I'm going to type click. And after that, I'm going to put a comma and space, and I'm going to type in function to initialize a function. Awesome. All right. So now inside of this space that I have set up for my function, I'm able to go ahead and type some sort of message inside of this div that says that my button was clicked on. So what I'm going to do is first select this div, which has the ID problem1. And just like I did with my button, I'm going to do document I got element by ID. So I'm going to say document dot get, let's make sure I type this right, get element by ID. And the ID that I'm looking for is problem1, right? So this div here has the ID of problem1. So now that I have my div, what I want to do is say dot inner HTML to override anything that's inside of that div. And what I want to do is override it with a message that says the button, let's make sure I have a capital T there, the button was clicked. And an exclamation point because we did a good job. Alright, so if this works, I should be able to click on my run button in the top left here of my JSFiddle. And now when I scroll down and I click on the click me button, I should see inside of my div, ta-da, I have a message there that says the button was clicked. This is awesome. So the basics of creating an event listener, super, super easy. Again, you select the element that you want to attach the event listener to. You take that element, you add an event listener. This could be any event, whether it's on click, on blur, which we're going to get to in a little bit. Then you go ahead and create a function that's going to create some sort of response on that web page, which in this case what we did was we grabbed this div here and we just added a message in there. Awesome. All right. So problem 1 is taken care of. The next step we're going to do is go ahead and take care of problem 2. So let me scroll down here on my web page. And problem 2 essentially wants us to do the same thing we did in problem 1. So we're going to create an event handler that will recognize when button 2 was double clicked. So in this case, what we're going to do is instead of doing it for a single click, this time we're going to do the same thing but with a double click. Now I hate retyping, so what I'm going to do is actually copy all the code that we have already for problem 1, paste it under problem 2. And first things first, we're going to take our variable for button 1, change that to button 2 for problem 2. The element that we want to get by its ID, looks like the second button has the ID of button 2. So we're going to make sure to change this to button 2. All right. Next, we're going to say button 2 dot add event listener click. Now, whenever you use click, this is actually registering a single click. What we want to actually register for is a double click. So what we're going to do is type DBL click, and that is actually the event listener for a double click. Now the function that I want to run, I want to get the element by the ID, not problem1, but the problem2 div. The problem2 div that's right over here. And I know it has the ID of problem2 because my problem set told me to right here. Right, and what I want to do inside of that div is change the HTML to say that the button was double clicked. Now when I run, I can see, if I scroll down, I can single click problem 1, my button was clicked. I can double click problem 2, oops, and the button was double clicked, which is awesome. So I have problem 1 taken care of and problem 2 taken care of. All right, now problem 3. Create an event handler that will recognize when the text input field with the ID name was clicked. So here it looks like I have a text input field, and when I type in there, when I click in there and I click away, nothing really happens. So what I want to do is check to see when I've clicked in there, and then go ahead and create a message down here in the section that tells me that I did so. So again, I'm going to copy the same code that I have from problem 2 over to problem 3. And the variable that I'm going to work with this time, I'm going to go ahead and call this one name, since the name of the input box is name. So name equals get element by ID name, right? Because name is the ID that this input form has. And then I'm going to say name.add event listener. And we're not looking for a double click. What we're actually looking for is for input. So whenever the user adds some sort of input into this field, I want to be able to show text inside of my problem 3 div. So inside of problem 3, whenever the user adds input, we're going to go ahead and display the user has added input, exclamation point. All right, so let me run and scroll down to problem 3. When I click in there and type, I should see my message that says the user has added input. Awesome. All right, so far we have problem 1, problem 2, and problem 3 tackled. So next we're going to go ahead and try problem number 4. So problem number 4, I'm already looking and seeing that I have a new element on there. So problem number 4 is going to ask me to try hovering over the red box below. When I hover right now, nothing's happening, nothing changes. So the problem was asking me to create an event handler that will recognize when the user hovers over the div with the ID hoverMe. So what I want to do is display a message whenever I hover over this red box. So again, I'm going to copy my same code from problem 3, paste it into problem 4, and what I'm going to do here is give it a name. So the first variable, I'm going to call it red box. And I'm going to say, actually I'm going to call this hoverMe instead so I can remember the exact action that I'm performing. So hoverMe is going to get the element by its ID. What ID does this red box have? It looks like it has the ID hoverMe. So we're going to call it hoverMe in there. And we're going to say hoverMe.add event listener. And what we're going to try to look for is when we hover over this element, which when I look through the W3 Schools documentation, said is actually called mouse over. So whenever I mouse over, I'm technically hovering over that element. Now when I mouse over that element, I'm going to change the problem 4 div. So I'm going to call this problem 4. And inside of that div, I want to say the user has hovered over the red box. All right, now if I run this section of code here and I scroll down, here is my red box. If I hover, ta-da, I get my message that says the user has hovered over the red box. This is great. We have 4 down, just one more problem to go. All right, so the last problem, problem 5, looks like we have a blue box now. And it's going to tell me to try dragging the blue box below. So when I drag, I click and drag, nothing is happening. So my job here is to create an event handler that will recognize when the user drags the blue div with the ID drag me. And I'm going to have to display a message down here. So one last time, I'm going to copy the chunk of code we used for problem 4. And I'm going to paste it down here for problem 5. The variable we're going to start with first, I'm going to call this one drag me. And for drag me, the element, what is the ID for this blue box here? Looks like it's called drag me too. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in drag me. And we're going to say drag me dot add event listener. And we're not looking for a mouse over anymore. What we're looking for is when we drag on this blue box. So we're going to say drag. And the function that we want to occur is we're going to get the problem5 div. And inside of there, we're going to replace the HTML to say the user has dragged the blue box. Awesome. So if I go here and I run, and I scroll down to the bottom, I have my blue box. And now when I drag, ta-da, I get a message that says the user has dragged the blue box. So as you guys can see, we had 5 problem sets here, and each of the 5 problem sets had its own unique issue dealing with event listeners, whether that was on hover, on drag, if we scroll up, when you're actually typing inside of an input field, when you click, or whether you double clicked on a button. There's a lot of really great things you can do with user interactions on web pages if you just take the time to implement a little bit of JavaScript event listeners to that site. So that was it for today's lesson. I hope you guys were able to learn a little bit more about what we have and what we're actually covering here when it comes to event listeners, and we hope to see you guys using this in some of your future projects. Cool. All right, so thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.